It's hot. It's so hot. Everything is sweat. Shower 5, 6 times a day just to try to stay ahead of it. It's awful. Awful. It's like, it's so hot, I'm just like tired. I just feel exhausted from existing in this heat. It's the worst. I don't know how to make it better. Put the air conditioner on soon. I guess. All right, look at this healthy, happy crowd. Look at all these nice people. Get better air. I have great ones. I just haven't put them in yet. It's after that. I haven't put them in yet. I have one air conditioner. It's like 14,000 BTUs. I'm pretty sure it's illegal in Europe to have an air conditioner like this one. It could probably like preserve meat if I put meat in front of it. And then I have a couple smaller ones for the smaller ones, but that big one, man, that's something. The thing is, it's like, I don't know, it's only like only in the 70s. It's just so humid. It's like death humid. It's like living in a mouth and just sitting in a tongue constantly. Constant tonguing. My entire being. It's terrible. Oh, man. So, everyone excited for the weekend? Big weekend plans? Fun, interesting, exciting things to do this weekend? Yes. Yeah, you do. You do need to turn them on, plug them in, mount them in a window, all sorts of stuff, all sorts of weird steps you have to go through before air conditioners actually work. I know, man. Whew. The ADR paper came out. Looking forward to reading it. Well, you should paste the link in chat. Don't keep it to yourself. Forest. Julie says Sooner Con, science fiction, fantasy, literary con. Nano visitor is guest. All right, Julie. Where you going with that? What is Sooner Con? Weekend plans. There we go. All right, now it all makes sense. It's like, Julie, you're crazy. Someone call an ambulance for Julie. Darren says, holy jeez. Darren says, have you ever seen anyone that just maxed up on a schedule to match changing workloads during the day? No, that's pretty creative, though. I think most people, I say most people, I will say most people who would have those needs might just invest in Resource Governor and have different workloads run under different little like logins so that you can classify them and set maxed up differently. But you can't do that on every version of SQL Server. You can only do that on Enterprise. So. I've never personally seen that, no, but I guess I don't care that much. I don't think that would freak me out too badly. Hey, what do you know? Let's see. Nothing interesting there. Twitter is terrible as usual. All right, good stuff. Sweet. Let's see. Lee asks, Lee inquires, why does option recompile not seem to work sometimes? We had an issue the other day where it made zero difference, even though we knew it was using a poor plan. Oh, man. So there's a lot of missing detail here. And it could just be that even with a recompile hint, SQL Server thought that it was choosing a good plan. That would be my guess. You say not work. I mean, that's a gray area for anything. But if I walk up to with my hands, this doesn't work. Like, what's not working? What exactly didn't work? Like, so I'll give you an example of the difference. Like I'm testing a lot of my current demos on SQL Server 2019, and I frequently complain that they don't work anymore. It doesn't mean that they're like throwing errors. It just means that they are no longer exhibiting the behavior that they used to. So screw you, SQL Server 2019. You're making me do work. He says, we passed the values through another set of parameters, and then it used a new, different plan. Oh, so you did the optimize for unknown trick. You like declared variables, set them equal to the other variables, and then did the thing. I guess that's it. I would like to see this dynamic sequence too, because I bet. Yeah, so when you declare local variables like that, it's basically like saying optimize for unknown. And you can, I mean, sometimes the guesses are like okay. A lot of the times the guesses are very bad. I probably wouldn't want to leave that solution in place for very long. Who knows when that ticking time bomb will go off? So, you know what? I think you should post. I think you should post this on dba.stackexchange.com. I think you should show us the dynamic SQL. I think you should show us the plans. I think you should get us some more information, all in one place where we can see. Because then you could get a great answer. From me here, you're just going to get a very speculative answer. The proc will be rewritten. All right, fine. Fine. I didn't want to help anyway. You think about that. Unless you meant you're hiring me. Does that mean you're hiring me to do it? That would be awesome. Woohoo, I have a job. Just kidding. I still. On the plus side, though, I have stopped applying for jobs, so I no longer feel rejected. It turns out that I get as many jobs when I don't apply to them as I do when I do apply to them. So I have the same number of jobs, just without any threat of rejection. So that's nice. I feel fine. I feel A-okay. It's a good time. Good time. Good time. Oh, it's still hot. It's still too hot. It's still too hot to exist. I don't have any plans this weekend, in case you're wondering. I got nothing. Low key, as usual. Buy some ice cold wine, then just drown myself in it. It's my big plan. There's a lot of weird, well, not weird, but there's a lot of oddly placed school holidays right now. I'm not saying the holidays are weird. I'm just saying their timing during the week is weird. Like today, my daughter had Tuesday and Thursday off, and so like there were weird like sleepovers and like play dates, and it's just like just go to school. Go to school. It's too much work when you're not in school. It's exhausting. can't keep track of the days. And I have a gigantic fan in here. Actually, you can't see it anymore. Never mind. But the gigantic fan is not helping my situation one bit. It's all downhill. It's the opposite of Lee Brownhill. It's Eric Downhill. All right. Do we have questions? Does anyone have a question? Anybody? You can make something up. Even if you know the answer, you can just make up a question. Otherwise, I'm going to go back to sweating off camera, which is preferable for me. Because these headphones at about 30 degrees to my head. Darren asks if I've worked with JSON and SQL Server at all. No, and I probably won't unless all of a sudden query plans get converted to JSON. Forrest asks, what's your naming convention for test machines? I don't have one. I named them SQL and then the version they are. So my test VMs are back to SQL Server 2008 with the most recent service pack, and they're just called SQL 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, 2014, because I have no need for it. I don't have dev and QA and test and all that. All I have is a few lowly VMs that I just have to make sure that scripts don't return red results on. Rex says he's working on an issue with McAfee post-upgrade, or McAfee post-upgrade, causing 98% CPU, and the application gets orphan sessions. It sounds like someone didn't do the right AV exclusions. So like McAfee is trying to scan your SQL Server stuff, like MDFs, LDFs, bin folder, things like that. I've never really understood the point of having antivirus on a SQL server. People aren't generally uploading things to it, like putting things on there. I don't know. That's just me, though. Seems like it causes more trouble than it's worth. Yeah, the database server hosting the database. Yeah, I got you. James says, any reason not to use SQL Server 2017 in production over SQL Server 2016? I wouldn't use either one. I would just wait for SQL Server 2019. Why put yourself behind the upgrade 8-ball when SQL Server 2019 will be out in, I don't know, 3-4 months? Could use the newest, latest, greatest, buggiest version of SQL Server that Microsoft has available in production. That sounds like a much better time to me. I would wait for that. Let's see. That's a good name. I'm gonna Nandalution. I'm gonna go with that part of it. What would you recommend as essential basics to learn for a newly appointed junior DBA with no DBA or SQL experience? Well, that depends on what you're administering a little bit. If it's your job to just deal with like backups and check DB and uptime and looking after whatever HADR is in place and making sure that your servers have the right settings, then it's a different story than if you're looking at indexes and performance. So scope your job for me. Tell me what you do day to day. I will give you a better answer. Farah says, what are common issues to watch out for on 100 core plus servers? Oh man, I don't know. Not thread pool. Licensing. Licensing would be an issue that I would watch out for pretty hard. That's expensive. That sounds like an interesting one. be really careful how I set max stop. Really careful. Martin says he'd be worried about having enough I/O to serve those cores. I would have so much RAM in that server that I/O would not be an issue. I would have just, like, if you can afford a 100-core server, which indicates that you have Enterprise Edition, then there is absolutely no reason that you shouldn't have that thing packed to the gills with memory. I don't care if you have a 4 gigabyte database on that server. I would have like 8 terabytes of memory. That's an interesting point, though, because you got to figure with per core you can do about 200 megs a second if they're like decently fast cores. If you have a 100-core server, though, I'd be a little bit curious what the clock speed is on those. If it's over 2, I might be surprised. Like 1.6, 1.8, somewhere in there. Those wide processors have grandpa speeds on them. And not fun. I see a lot of people have to buy those too. They get a VM host and they have to get enough cores to serve a whole bunch of guests, and it's just 28, 56, 48 cores of garbage. I saw a VM server recently with AMD chips in it. I just laughed. Like, why did you do that to us? Why? Why? Just cut one of your legs off. AMD in the server. That'll be the day. AMD's going to start writing checks monthly. Yes, keep saying that. Monitoring. What's funny is every time I post one of these things, I'm like, go ahead, ask your questions via email or, what do you call it? Twitter or wherever. Like, literally ask a question in any way that you want. My DMs are open, and all I get are porn bots saying hi to me, then following me, and then getting their account gets deleted shortly afterwards. And I end up even lonelier than before. Story of my life. Porn bots and loneliness. Title of my memoirs. All right. Waiting. Watching. Staring. All right, I'm going to give this one more shot. No. All right. Thanks for showing up. It is too hot to stand here. Oh, man. There we go. James had to ask it. James had to catfish me. James says, what do you recommend the minimum hardware requirements for a production system that has 1,000 gigabyte database? My current company has a setup of 2 cores and 4 gigs of RAM for all their new systems. You messing with me? Like physically trying to mess with me? That's not gonna fly unless there is like. Do you have users? I guess would be my question, because if you don't have users, that will probably work really, really well. Yeah. So the funny thing about where I would start with that is the sort of funny thing about SQL Server is that it doesn't work with pages on disk. Anything that you want to read, like presumably people want to read stuff out of that 100 gig database, and I'm willing to bet that your tables or indexes are over the 4 gig mark. So like anything that SQL wants to read or do anything with, doesn't matter if it's insert, update, delete, select, it has to be in memory first. So it's funny too, because even if you're on standard edition of 2012, you can put like 96 gigs of memory in there, and you can cache 64 gigs of memory right in the buffer pool, and then you can have like 16 gigs for the OS, and you can have like, I don't know, 30 or something, 20 something in there just for SQL Server to use for caches and memory grants and all that other fun stuff. And if you have SQL Server 2014 or newer, or 17, you can have 100. Oh, excuse you. You can have 128 gigs of RAM just for the buffer pool. You could cache that entire database in memory. So I would go out on a limb and say that that is probably inadequate hardware for a 100 gig database. As a matter of fact, I would probably say that that is mostly only adequate hardware for a 4 gigabyte database. Maybe 8 if you're very lucky. Maybe even 12 if you have incredibly good indexing and incredibly well-written queries. But otherwise, this is not going to pan out too well. I'm sure that there are query and index tuning opportunities available in that database. I just don't think that with 4 gigs of RAM, I would just walk away from that server. There is absolutely no point in trying to do anything there. That is always going to suck. Yeah, it's basically like a bare minimum Windows install. Yeah, you can hire me to do anything you want. I will do anything for money. Just to keep the women in my life happy. Let's see here. This is so Nandolution says it's not for me, it's for someone I've recently appointed, so I don't know what's best to prioritize for learning. They got thrown in and had to learn as fast as things fell over. I don't want them to have the same experience, and want them to have a good rounded education in being a DBA, so they're less surprised by the challenges of the role. Yeah, that makes sense. But again, you haven't told me what they're going to be responsible for. So if you have them being responsible for like backups and CheckDB, then that's the first kind of round of stuff they have to learn about. If you have them responsible for a 12-node AG, they better get their butt in gear. Learn something about AG. You see what I mean about how the scope of a job can be different, will lead to different advice. Like if they're just managing like a few agent jobs, and maybe if they're I don't know, just making sure that the server is up and running, that's a totally different DBA than someone who's got to go in and check out indexes and see if they make sense and all that other stuff. Monitor performance, not just like up, down, red, green monitoring or whatever colorblind colors people have out there in the world, but you know what I mean? It's like different skill sets, different things you have to do. Every city truck sounds like that. Every single one. The city has not had a quiet truck in 25 years. Every truck sounds like an earthquake when it goes by. Every truck. I'm gonna fire the city. Yeah, I don't know. Other things I'm thinking about with the 100 gig database on. So here's another funny thing. I'm going to go ahead and assume that VM or that server that it's sitting on is a virtual machine. And I'm going to tell you something very funny about virtual machines. When you buy licensing for them, they have a minimum of 4 cores. So you've actually paid for 2 cores that you're not using. And if that's standard edition, that's $4,000, and if it's enterprise edition, that's $14,000. So that's actually a very stupid setup from a licensing perspective, because you're actually paying for things that you're not using. Like imagine if I was like, yeah, come to my restaurant. It costs $2,000 per plate, or per seat, and you have to buy a minimum of 4 seats to come in, and then you only show up with 2 people. I get to keep $4,000 and not do any work. You're giving Microsoft money that they haven't earned. All that licensing money that you are not using. It's silly. It's money out the door. No such thing as a 2-core VM with SQL Server. Start with 4. You're paying for them. Why would you want to give Microsoft free money? You have any idea how much free money they have from not fixing anything? Decades. You keep paying them. You get new versions with features that are broken, half implemented, don't really work. You just keep paying and paying and paying, and then you give them free money with unused cores. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely, positively ridiculous. Whoever's rule that is, I would pull them in an alley and beat them. The only solution for that level of stupid is probably beatings. I can't think of anything else that would cure that level of inanity. So is it that like that's how everything starts out, and then like if there's a problem they can magically find more hardware, or is it like if there's a problem it's SQL Server's fault and it couldn't possibly be the hardware because it's a VM or something? I hate companies. Yeah, it's always SQL Server's fault. Oh, Raphael, don't do that. Don't add hot CPU. Don't have the hot add CPU. No. Yeah. Not good. Yeah. Sorry to hear all that. So the first thing I would do is disable hot add CPU. The second thing I would do is make sure that the CPU setup of the VM is not 884. I would do like 2 by what's that, 16, 20. Wait, you said 24 cores at 884. 16 plus 4 is 20. 8 plus 8 plus 4 is 20. I'm being told, whispering in my earpiece, it's 20. Cal-based yeah, wow, you have so much to do. I'm so glad that you're here to tell me this story. So you have much work to do, my friend. If you want to keep those 24 cores, you're going to have to SKU upgrade. If you want to not have SQL Server act like a piece of crap, you should disable the hot add CPU. And then Newell will probably work itself out once you work that out. But yeah, that's something. That's something. I would also try to take your boss's job. I don't think he's very good at it. You can tell him I said that. I'm not afraid of him. Unless he's from Yonkers, then I might be afraid of him. I would recommend you for your boss's position. Change max stop to 8 already. I don't even know if I would put it at 8. I might put it at 4, because that one poor split up CPU just might get real in a real weird place with it at 8. I might even lower it. 4 would probably be my number, at least until that other thing gets straightened out. When the other thing gets straightened out, I might change it to 8. But man, at least if it's 4, you can like keep all your queries within a thing. Yeah, your boss is incompetent is the problem. And I don't think your boss is going to go check on SQL Server parallelism settings. I'm pretty sure that you could make that change and do your thing. And if he or he or she, I don't want to assume anyone's role in this great wide world, has anything to say about it. You can say Eric Darling told him max.4. Eric Darling says max.4. Tell your boss that he's wrong. That he shouldn't have that job. He's micromanaging. Bosses shouldn't be setting those kind of limits on their employees. They should not. Bosses who manage technical employees and who outsource the management of technology to other people should not ever micromanage little things like that. Ever. It's a big mistake. You end up with things being technically dumb, especially if you don't listen to your technical employees about the things that they know best. I am very technical with SQL Server. But if you expected me to do something technical, or you wanted me to make a technical decision about like an availability group, it wouldn't happen. Would say, what do you know about availability groups? You tell me what you want to do with the availability group. You tell me why it makes sense. I'll ask you hard questions about why you want to do that and see if you've thought this whole thing through, but I'm not going to say you can only set max stop to 8. You can't set it to 4, only 8. The only change you can make is max stop to 8. It's idiotic. Why would a boss make that kind of a boss who presumably knows nothing about SQL Server? That's why they hired you. I don't get it. Fire your boss. Throw him out a window. Anyway. Let's see. My physical hosts are 2 NUMA nodes with 6 cores each. 12 cores would be the maximum recommended. Maximum recommended for what? I don't know. Like to give the VM? You have physical VM hosts with 6 cores? Or 12 cores? What the shit? We gotta talk. We have to have a long talk. Yeah, so here's the problem with that. You have a VM host with 2 sockets and 6 cores per socket. So you have 12 cores total for a VM host. And you want to give 12 cores to SQL Server. The issue becomes if you have anything else on that box and you have SQL Server trying to co-schedule something where it's already co-scheduling. SQL Server is already co-scheduled quite a bit. Even if it's by itself on a VM host, SQL Server is being scheduled by vSphere. SQL Server is being scheduled by Windows, and then SQL Server is being internally scheduled by itself. So you just have 3 layers of scheduling going on already. And now if you throw other VMs on that host, they're also being co-scheduled on the same processors. There is like recursive, infinite recursion of co-processing going on. And that's just a really terrible idea. I'm going to give you a quick example that's a little bit more extreme than what you're telling me about. And I was working with a client when I was still with Brent, and these people had a 4-core VM. I think I've told this story. They had a 4-core VM, and they had performance problems. And I said, yeah, I agree, you do. You have performance problems because you have a 4-core VM. And you have like a 200 and something gig database. You have 16 gigs of RAM, and it was really, really not pretty. And then, like the further we dug in, it turned out that not only did the VM have 4 cores, but it was another consultant who had set up this VM host, and the VM host itself had 4 cores, and the VM host itself was hosting 12 other SQL Server workloads. So there were times I was like, something's weird here. I didn't know that stuff until like a little bit later, but when I was first trying to poke around at stuff, we would like run a query, finish instantly. Run the same query again, take 4 seconds. Run the same query again, finish instantly. Run the same query again, 11 seconds. Run the same query, instant. Run the same query, 25. So it was like every time we ran this query, it was like all over the place with how long it would take. And wouldn't you know, eventually it came to light that there was no remote NUMA. There was one NUMA node with 4 cores. There were 12 other SQL servers sharing the same 4 cores. That was it. Every of the 12 servers on that VM host were using the same 4 cores, and everything was attempting to be scheduled at once. And I think the entire box had like maybe 64 gigs of RAM. It was like shittier than my laptop. I'm sorry, crappier than my laptop. But yeah, it was a bad time. With VM hosts like that, if you have a one-to-one mapping of your guest to your host, you have done yourself a tremendous disservice. It's not something that you should be doing. Anyway, we have gone to almost 40 minutes, which is almost 10 minutes longer than I usually go for. Anyway, I'm going to get going and try and go take my 4th shower of the day and do that, because people are starting to leave now. I've talked too long. Anyway, goodbye. Have a great weekend. I will see you next time. Hopefully everyone can make it. My weekend is not installing air conditioning. My weekend will be installing air conditioning and then lying in front of it, making sacrifices to the gods of Freon. That's mine. Goodbye.